In the grand theater of human existence, there is a silent, invisible architect constantly reshaping the landscape of our lives. This architect is change. It moves with the quiet persistence of the tide, eroding the shorelines of the familiar and depositing the sands of the unknown upon the doorsteps of those who lead. Every thought, every deliberate action, and every word spoken throughout a lifetime has served as a silent preparation for the moment a leader stands at the helm of a shifting ship. It is often said that leadership exists in many forms and sizes, from the quiet corridors of a family home where a parent orchestrates the chaotic harmony of a large household, to the glass-walled boardrooms in major financial hubs in Europe or North America. Whether one is guiding a group of volunteers under the soft glow of evening lamps, coaching a youth sports team on a sun-drenched weekend, or navigating the complex machinery of a global startup, the essence remains the same. The art of leadership is not confined to titles or tax brackets. It is the fundamental human capacity to inspire, to organize, and to motivate others toward a horizon they cannot yet see. Yet even for the most seasoned guide, the arrival of change rarely brings a sense of jubilation. It is a rare occurrence for the human heart to leap with joy at the sight of its routines being dismantled. There is a profound comfort in the rhythm of the known, a sanctuary in the way things have always been. A leader might spend years perfecting a system, finding a state of grace in the flow of events, only to have a sudden, monumental shift disrupt the equilibrium. This shift can arrive like a sudden storm on a clear day, leaving even the most resolute figures feeling confused, demotivated, and profoundly uncomfortable. It is in these moments of transition that the true weight of leadership is felt, not in the easy days of stability, but in the shivering uncertainty of the new. The world stands in constant need of those who can navigate these waters, from governments struggling to find a focal point for their communities, to large corporations facing the relentless pressure of global competition. The cry for steady leadership is universal. In every corner of the globe, from the bustling markets in Latin America to the clinical halls of hospitals reaching their limits in England, the fragility of leadership is often exposed by its absence. Weakness in guidance manifests as scandal, as internal conflict within families that feel like war zones, or as the frequent churning of coaches in professional sports who fail to find consistency. When one thinks of success in this arena, the mind might wander to grand, visible figures whose names are synonymous with innovation, or perhaps to the more humble but equally vital leaders in one's own life, a coordinator who saw potential where others saw failure, a community leader who transformed a neighborhood, or a partner who provides the steady foundation for a shared life. These 100 lessons of leadership are not merely abstract concepts. They are the armor and compass for the journey ahead. They are designed to transform an individual into the kind of example that others do not just follow, but admire and seek to emulate. To embark on this path is to recognize that many people possess a vast arsenal of tools and advantages that remain tragically underutilized. Many cling to their weaknesses as if they were safety blankets, allowing them to hinder progress and stifle growth. But the true leader views this journey as an opportunity for deep self-reflection. It is a time to ponder how one wishes to grow, how to cultivate followers who will one day become leaders themselves, and ultimately what kind of legacy will be left behind in the hearts and minds of those who were led. As this exploration begins, it becomes clear that the path to success is paved with the mastery of self-leadership, the understanding of one's own motivations, and the ability to communicate with a clarity that cuts through the fog of uncertainty. The road is long and the challenges are many, but for those willing to invest the time and effort, the rewards are as vast as the world waiting for their guidance. As the sun sets on the old way of doing things, a leader must stand ready to greet the dawn of the new. The transition is never easy, and the resistance is often fierce. People do not naturally gravitate toward the unknown. They cling to the shores of the past with a desperate grip. But the role of the guide is to show them that the water is not as cold as it looks, and that the shore on the other side holds a promise that the current one can no longer fulfill. The question is not whether change will come, but how the leader will stand when it arrives. Will they be swept away by the current of their own fear, or will they become the anchor that holds the team steady while they find their footing? The journey into the heart of change begins with a single courageous step into the resistance, looking it in the eye and recognizing it for what it truly is, the birth pains of progress.
The initial impact of a significant change often feels like a physical blow to the collective psyche of a group. In the quiet moments before the storm, there is a sense of order, a belief that the current trajectory is both sustainable and permanent. But human nature is inherently tied to the familiar, and when that familiarity is threatened, the reaction is almost universal. Leaders, despite their perceived strength, are not immune to this. They may find themselves suddenly plunged into a state of disorientation, where the strategies of yesterday no longer apply to the realities of today. This confusion can quickly spiral into a loss of motivation, a deep-seated discomfort that gnaws at the edges of their confidence. In some cases, the weight of the new becomes so burdensome that the impulse to retreat, to simply resign and walk away, becomes a siren song that is difficult to ignore. This resistance is not a sign of failure or a lack of character. It is a fundamental part of the human experience. It is the natural friction that occurs when the old is forced to give way to the new. Leaving behind the comfort of the known is akin to a form of loss, a grieving for the version of the world that once was. It is a process that mirrors the way individuals cope with the most profound departures in their personal lives. When a leader observes their team reacting with anger, frustration, or a stubborn refusal to accept a new process, they are witnessing the stages of an emotional cycle that has been documented across cultures and generations. It begins with the initial shock, that sharp intake of breath when the news first breaks, the wide-eyed surprise that something so established could be altered. From shock, the journey moves into the more volatile territories of anger and frustration. In this stage, the air becomes heavy with why and how could they. The confusion is not just about the change itself, but about the perceived injustice of it. Why must we change what is already working? Why must we learn new skills when our old ones served us so well? This internal struggle is a battle against the unknown, a frantic attempt to hold on to the edges of a disappearing reality. Leaders who do not understand this process may react with impatience, seeing the anger as a personal affront or a lack of loyalty. However, the successful leader recognizes that these emotions are the necessary fuel for the transformation that is to come. They are the heat that makes them malleable. As the anger begins to simmer, a more subtle phase emerges, the desire to negotiate. This is the stage of if only and maybe we can just do part of it. It is a desperate attempt to find a middle ground where the change is minimized, a way to keep one foot in the past while reluctantly placing the other in the future. People bargain for time, for exemptions, for any version of the reality that feels less threatening. For a leader, this is a delicate time. It requires a balance between firm direction and empathetic listening. To ignore the bargaining is to risk further alienation, but to give in too much is to stall the very progress that the change was intended to bring. The tension here is between the necessity of the future and the comfort of the past, and navigating this tension is one of the most rigorous tests of a leader's resolve. Finally, if the leader has guided the ship with a steady hand, the process leads towards acceptance. Acceptance is not necessarily the same as enthusiastic approval, but it is the point where the resistance ceases to be the primary focus. It is the moment when the team stops looking back at the shore they left and starts looking forward at the ocean ahead. They begin to find their rhythm in the new environment, discovering that the unknown is not a void but a space filled with new possibilities. A successful leader understands that reaching this point is not an accident. It is the result of a deliberate journey through the stages of grief and transformation. They recognize that their role is not to bypass these emotions, but to walk through them alongside their team, providing the light that keeps the darkness of fear at bay. In this setup of conflict, the leader serves as both a participant and a guide. They must face their own internal resistance, acknowledging their own shock and their own desire to bargain with the inevitable. Only by confronting their own shadows can they hope to lead others through theirs. The conflict is not between the leader and the team, or even between the team and the change. It is a conflict within each individual, a struggle to reconcile the need for growth with the desire for safety. As this narrative unfolds, we see that the true challenge of leadership is not in the implementation of a new system, but in the stewardship of the human spirit during the transition. The first major development in this journey is the realization that change is not a problem to be solved, but a process to be managed with grace and understanding.
Deepening the exploration of this transition requires a leader to move beyond the surface-level mechanics of change and into the emotional depths of the people they serve. It is here, in the quiet conversations and the unspoken tensions of the workplace, that the real work of leadership happens. To face resistance effectively, one must first accept that recovery from shock and surprise takes time. It is a mistake to demand immediate adaptation or to pretend that the change is not happening. Denial is a powerful anesthetic, but it eventually wears off, leaving the pain of the transition even more acute. A leader must hold the space for the reality of the situation, allowing the weight of the shift to be felt without letting it crush the collective spirit. Understanding the why behind a change is the first bridge across the chasm of resistance. It is not enough for a leader to know the reasons.
They must be able to articulate the positive reasons and the ultimate benefits of the transition in a way that resonates with the team. This can be an arduous task, especially if the leader themselves feels that the change is unnecessary or even detrimental. Yet the responsibility remains to find that silver lining, to search for the hidden opportunity within the upheaval. When the reasons are shared, they must be presented not as cold edicts from on high, but as a shared vision of a better future. Even in the most challenging transitions, those occurring in the complex social landscapes of the American continent or the shifting economic tides of Europe, the ability to find meaning in the struggle is what separates a manager from a true leader. Emotion is the language of change, and a leader must be fluent in it. Allowing the team to express their feelings is not an act of weakness, it is a vital release valve for the pressure that builds during times of uncertainty. It is common for anxiety and fear to become the dominant atmospheric conditions when a new situation is introduced. A leader must validate these feelings, acknowledging that it is natural to feel afraid of what we do not know. By saying, "I understand that this is difficult," the leader builds a bridge of trust that allows the team to feel seen and heard. This emotional progression is key to moving from a state of reactive resistance to one of active participation. Dialogue becomes the tool of the craftsman during this period of development. People naturally want to know the timeline. Will this happen now? Is it going as planned? These questions are often thinly veiled expressions of the bargaining stage, a way of testing the boundaries of the new reality. Successful leaders encourage these discussions, giving people the time they need to process the information and to voice their concerns. It is through this back and forth, this messy and often repetitive process of communication, that the team begins to digest the change. The leader acts as a steadying presence, a person who can absorb the frustration and return it in the form of calm, clear direction. As the narrative of change deepens, it becomes clear that acceptance is not a destination, but a state of being. The goal is not just for the team to conform to the new way of doing things, but for them to feel comfortable within it. Conformity is a grudging submission, a way of surviving the change without truly embracing it. Acceptance, however, is a transformative state, where the team begins to see the change as an integral part of their own growth. This shift is much easier to achieve if the leader has already done the internal work to accept and agree with the transition themselves. If the leader's own reservations have been addressed, their conviction becomes a beacon that others can follow. They become the living proof that it is possible to move through the fog and come out stronger on the other side. This intellectual and emotional progression is the heart of the retelling. It is a story of human resilience, of the capacity to adapt and thrive in the face of the unknown. Every scene of dialogue, every shared reflection, and every moment of rising tension serves to emphasize that leadership is a deeply human endeavor. It is about more than just results and bottom lines. It is about the courage to lead a group of people through the dark forest of change and into the light of a new day. As the team moves closer to this light, the internal struggles that once seemed insurmountable begin to fade, replaced by a sense of collective purpose and a renewed belief in their own ability to navigate the shifting tides of the world.
The climax of this journey through change often arrives not as a single explosive event, but as a critical revelation that redefines everything that came before. It is the moment when the resistance reaches its peak, where the tension between the old ways and the new reality becomes unbearable. In this turning point, the leader is faced with a choice: to double down on authority and demand compliance, or to lean into the vulnerability of the moment and facilitate a true breakthrough. This peak is often reached in the American continent or in Latin America, where rapid growth and cultural shifts demand a constant state of evolution. It is here that the original intensity of the struggle is translated into an emotionally gripping sequence of realization. Imagine a team meeting where the frustration has finally boiled over. The air is thick with the unspoken fears of those who feel their skills have become obsolete, who worry that the new processes will expose their inadequacies. This is the moment of confrontation, where the leader must address the elephant in the room. Some individuals may be standing on the defensive, cloaking their fear in the guise of professional skepticism. They might argue that the old way was faster, more efficient, or more aligned with the company's values. But beneath the surface, the true issue is a fear of falling behind. The revelation for the leader is that the resistance is not an act of defiance, but a cry for help. In this dramatic turning point, the leader shifts the conversation from the what of the change to the how of the support.
They recognize that if people are defensive because they lack new skills, the solution is not to criticize, but to provide training. If the team is struggling with new processes, the answer is to offer hands-on support. This realization changes the entire trajectory of the story. It transforms the leader from a harbinger of disruption into a provider of growth. The climax is the moment when the team realizes that the leader is not their adversary in this transition, but their strongest ally. This is the emotional peak where the walls of resistance begin to crumble, not under the force of a hammer, but through the warmth of empathy and the clarity of a shared path forward. For some, the change may feel like the final straw, the gota d'agua, that tips them over the edge into burnout. In these critical instances, the leader must demonstrate a profound level of care and attention. This might mean granting a day of rest, or providing a listening ear that goes beyond the professional and into the deeply personal. The climax of the change process is often found in these small, quiet acts of humanity that occur amidst the chaos of a large-scale transition. It is the realization that the success of the organization is inextricably linked to the well-being of the individuals within it. When this understanding takes hold, the atmosphere shifts from one of survival to one of mutual support. This turning point is also the moment where the leader's own transformation becomes evident. By standing in the fire of the team's resistance and remaining calm, the leader has evolved. They have moved from being a person who simply manages change to one who embodies the resilience required to thrive within it. This internal revelation that the leader's greatest strength is their ability to remain centered while the world around them shifts is the most dramatic development of all. It is the quiet authority that comes from having navigated the storm and found the eye of it. The climax is the transition into understanding, a moment of clarity where the path forward is finally visible, even if the terrain remains challenging. As the intensity of the confrontation fades, it is replaced by a sense of resolved purpose. The team begins to see that the change, while difficult, was necessary. They see the benefits they were previously blinded to by their own fear. They see the training and support as investments in their own future, rather than as burdens to be borne. The story's trajectory has been irrevocably altered. The energy that was once spent on resistance is now redirected towards implementation and innovation. The climax has passed, leaving in its wake a group that is more cohesive, more capable, and more ready to face whatever the future holds. The revelation is simple yet profound. Change is not the enemy of stability, it is the foundation of progress.
In the quiet aftermath of the climax, the world begins to settle into its new shape. The storm has passed, and while the landscape may look different, there is a sense of calm that follows the resolution of a long-standing conflict. For the leader and the team, this is the period of integration, where the new habits and processes start to become the new familiar. The internal and external transformations that occurred during the height of the transition now begin to bear fruit. The once intimidating software or the formerly confusing workflow gradually becomes a part of the daily rhythm, no longer a source of anxiety, but a tool for success. This resolution is not just about the technical aspects of the change. It is about the emotional settling that happens when people feel they have successfully navigated a crisis. There is a renewed sense of confidence within the team, a collective realization that they are more resilient than they previously believed. The leader observes this shift with a sense of quiet satisfaction, noting how the individuals who were once the most resistant are now the ones most effectively utilizing the new systems. The training that was provided has paid off, and the support that was offered has built a reservoir of loyalty and trust that will serve the group for years to come. One of the most profound consequences of this process is the transformation of the leader's relationship with their team. By guiding them through the stages of grief and into acceptance, the leader has demonstrated a level of empathy and commitment that transcends the traditional boundaries of the workplace. The team no longer sees the leader just as someone who gives orders, but as someone who is invested in their personal and professional growth. This shift in perception is a fundamental transformation that redefines the culture of the organization. It creates an environment where change is no longer feared, but is seen as a natural and manageable part of the journey. In the aftermath, there is also time for reflection on the lessons learned. The leader takes the time to speak with those who had the most difficulty, seeking to understand the root causes of their unhappiness and ensuring that their concerns were fully addressed. These conversations are not about reopening old wounds, but about ensuring that the healing is complete. If someone felt overwhelmed and was given the time they needed to recover,
that gesture is remembered and appreciated. This focus on individual care during a time of collective change is what solidifies the leader's reputation as a person of integrity and compassion. As the narrative settles, we see the emergence of a new equilibrium. The old has been successfully left behind, and the new has been embraced. The benefits that were once only theoretical are now tangible, perhaps in the form of increased efficiency, better collaboration, or a more vibrant and inclusive culture. The transition is complete, but the effects of the journey will remain. The team has been forged in the fire of change, and they have come out stronger, more adaptable, and more unified. The resolution is not just the end of a difficult period, but the beginning of a new chapter of growth and achievement. This period of aftermath is a vital part of the story, as it allows the listener to see the long-term impact of a leader's actions. It reinforces the idea that leadership is a long game, played out over months and years rather than days and weeks. The successful resolution of one change builds the foundation for the successful navigation of the next. The internal and external transformations are not temporary fixes, but permanent upgrades to the collective capabilities of the group. As the team settles into their new reality, they do so with a deeper understanding of themselves and their leader, ready to face the future with a renewed sense of purpose and a clear vision of what they can achieve together.
As we reach the conclusion of this narrative journey, the overarching meaning of the struggle becomes clear. Leadership is not a static state of being, but a continuous process of evolution. To lead is to stand at the intersection of what is and what could be, and to have the courage to bridge that gap. The lessons learned in the face of resistance are not just practical tools for management, they are philosophical insights into the nature of human progress. The ultimate lesson is that change is the only constant, and the ability to master the transition is the hallmark of a truly successful leader. In reflecting on the path taken, one realizes that the resistance encountered along the way was never an obstacle to be avoided, but a necessary part of the transformation. It was the resistance that forced the leader to develop empathy, to refine their communication, and to deepen their commitment to their team. It was the resistance that compelled the team to examine their own fears and to discover their own capacity for growth. In the end, the change was not something that happened to the group, but something that happened for them. It was the catalyst that moved them from a state of comfortable stagnation to one of dynamic potential. This story leaves us with a profound sense of clarity. We see that the stages of grief, shock, anger, bargaining, and acceptance are not just for the loss of a person, but for the loss of any version of ourselves or our world that we have outgrown. By embracing this process rather than fighting it, a leader can guide their team through the shadows of uncertainty and into the light of new opportunities. The essence of this message is one of hope and resilience. It reminds us that no matter how daunting a change may seem, there is always a way through it, provided there is a leader with the vision to see the path and the heart to walk it alongside others. The final takeaway is a reminder of the power of the human spirit to adapt and thrive. Whether in the home region or across the vast expanses of the global stage, the principles of leadership remain the same. It is about the courage to be honest about the challenges, the wisdom to find the positive reasons for the shift, and the compassion to support those who are struggling. It is about being the kind of leader that others admire, not because they are perfect, but because they are present, empathetic, and unwavering in their commitment to the collective good. As the narrative concludes, we are left to contemplate our own roles in the changes that inevitably come our way. How will we stand when the tide shifts? Will we cling to the shores of the past, or will we have the courage to set sail for the unknown? The story of leadership is at its heart the story of how we choose to respond to the call of the future. It is a call to grow, to learn, and to become more than we were yesterday. The legacy of a great leader is not found in the systems they implemented or the targets they hit, but in the people they inspired to embrace the journey of change with an open heart and a resilient mind. In the final moments of reflection, the emotional resonance of the journey lingers. We understand that the path of leadership is often solitary and fraught with difficulty, but it is also one of the most rewarding journeys a human being can undertake.
To guide others through the darkness of change and into the dawn of a new reality is an act of profound service and enduring significance. It is the work of a lifetime, a continuous unfolding of wisdom and grace. And as we look toward our own horizons, we do so with the knowledge that we are prepared, that we have the tools we need, and that the world is waiting for the kind of leadership that only we can provide.